Hey there, welcome to the latest episode of the Campus Comics Cast. This is Dan Brown, and I'm joined this time by
Scott Reed,
Mike Atchison.
Yeah, we're going to be we're going to be talking about a few different things this time. I just want to thank everybody that came out this past weekend for our Campus Comics Mini-Con. Not a lot of people, but we're glad for everybody that came. The weather definitely wasn't working with us that day, but I think we still had a good time and a lot of fun stuff going on in the store.
That is correct.
Might be a little while before we do another one, just because, it's going to be getting colder out and everything. But we'll let you know when that happens.
I think Mike mentioned the March or April time frame for another one. So.
Probably wait till spring to start doing them again. That way we get more vendors out there too, because can't really be setting up in the middle of the parking lot in the winter, that kind of thing. So, but when we do have them again, you can come to 816 East Main Street, Suite B in Carbondale. And that's where the store is located. And you can always check what's going on our Facebook or Twitter pages. And so I think first thing we wanted to go into, Scott, do you want to talk about the new Hulu series?
Sure. I'll be very brief here. We got this
Marvel in quotes with this?
Yes, big time in quotes, yeah. So really, really briefly, Helstrom started on Hulu several weeks ago. I'm not sure the exact release date of that series. This is a non-spoiler review, so I don't think I'm gonna give anything anyway. Big point.
Unlike the other stuff we do, which is heavy spoilers.
Heavy spoilers
later.
Yeah, and in fact, I haven't actually finished the series. I'm about 8 episodes in. There are 10 episodes in the series. This is basically a supernatural procedural. So if that type of show is of interest to you, then this is not bad. I think the actors are solid. There's no actors you're like, oh, they're just awful, So I think all the actors are relatively solid. But however, this really has almost zero ties to the actual Marvel universe. The writers are basically talking about it's in its own, Helstrom universe or whatever. The only Easter egg that I've noticed through the entire series is that there is a gas station named Roxxon, which is one of the common things in the Marvel universe.
Right.
But beyond that, I mean, they've even done some little minor things like, okay, so the main character is Damien Helstrom. Well, they changed his name from Damien to Damon. I guess they didn't want the tie-in to the Omen, like it was tied to the Omen.
Wow.
And his sister's name is Satana. And instead of calling her Satana at any point, it's just Anna. They never say son of Satan, which I guess I can almost understand why they omit that. But he has, that pentagram symbol on his chest, and while he has this scarring on his chest, it's not a pentagram. Yeah. So, and he's basically, he has the supernatural ability to exorcise demons is kind of what it boils down to. So basically their skill set is just pyrokinesis and telekinesis is kind of what it boils down to. So I guess just what I want to say is that if you are looking for a show that's heavily influenced by the Marvel Cinematic, look someplace else. However, if you like, again, supernatural procedural type of shows, then this might be worth checking out. All 10 episodes are already live on Hulu. To me, the best thing about the show was actually seeing Gary Friedrich get credit for creating the character in one of the opening seasons or opening credits. So like he's listed, Roy Thomas is listed. There are 2 other names that are listed, and off the top of my head, I can't remember who else gets credit there in that listing. But Gary Friedrich I went at a convention that I held in Harrisburg several years ago. He was a special guest, and of course, he really got railroaded by Marvel towards the end of his life. So it was nice to see his name actually show up and get some creator credits for these characters, even though they're almost nothing like the characters that he created. So anyway, non-spoiler review, just kind of give you heads up if you were thinking about checking out that series.
So we're probably not getting the Midnight Suns universe out of this, or
I don't think so.
don't see spinning off some of these other supernatural characters into shows or anything.
No, and since so many of those other characters were canceled, like shows were canceled, I mean, there was supposed to be some stuff with Ghost Rider, I thought, and that's gone. I'm really surprised that this made it out of all the things that they kept. This is what made it. So yeah, I guess the Roxxon Corporation has showed up in some of the other series like Cloak and Dagger and Runaways, maybe. So it kind of ties in with those, but there's nothing. It's all completely self-contained.
Right.
Yeah. Which I think is a huge mistake. Why not lean into? You have this multi-billion-dollar movie industry. You should lean into that, you would think.
Right.
But I don't know. I consider arrogance on the producers or the writers. Think, oh, we can do our own thing. We don't need that multi-billion-dollar industry to help us out. We can do it on our own.
I mean, do you think maybe some of that came down from the top, though, too, where Disney didn't want their Captain America associated with these satanic type characters? Or
well, they've removed all the satanic part out of it.
Right.
I mean, they have representation of like the Catholic Church, in there and for exorcisms and stuff like that. But I don't know, maybe. I just really think they probably just didn't really have any confidence in it is probably the reason why. Because like I said, it's not great. It's not terrible, but it's not great. So, but that could have something to do with it. But whenever you if you read anything from the writers and producers, they kind of sound like they just wanted it to be its own thing. So who knows?
Yeah. Yeah, probably not going to benefit them in the long run, I would think, the way.
I can't see how this there's no way I see this getting a second season. So.
Right. Yeah, but it's all up now, right? You'd say
it is all up 10 episodes. I think Hulu released it immediately. It wasn't one of those staged releases, so.
Yeah, I feel like that's usually what Hulu does. It seems like with the original stuff, it seems like it's weekly. Maybe they just decided this was better just to get it out there.
If they did, I guess I wasn't in a hurry to watch it, so maybe I've just spread it out enough that I didn't notice that they weren't releasing all the episodes. So.
Well, I don't think it's been out for 10 weeks though either.
Well, I guess let's see. Yeah, so maybe that's the case. Maybe they did one of those release 3 or something, and then and then go from there. But let me see if I can find it. I'm on the IMDb page. I was looking to see if I could find the episode list. See if there's release dates on the episode lists. But no, they just all say 2020. So.
Yeah, it probably just all dropped like that.
I didn't look that closely.
So. Right. Yeah, I don't think I've really seen anything on social media about it. Like, I don't think anybody's going on about the show online or anything, it seems like.
Yeah, no, and most of the reviews have been very, very, very blah or mixed or whatever. So, I found one release date here. I was looking to see what the other release date said. One release date was October 16th. I don't know if that's the last episode or the first episode. Okay, the first and last episode on the list have a release date of October 16th. So they were all released on the same day. So yeah, October 16th. So I guess we need to be through 8 episodes in 9 days as we record this.
So probably not the best news for diehard Son of Satan fans out there. Yeah. They were hoping for
both of you. Yeah. People who spent big bucks on that Marvel Spotlight 12 and Ghost Rider 1 to get those first appearance and cameos.
But on the flip side, Scott, would this appeal to the Monday viewer, the person that doesn't know much about the characters?
Well, you don't have to know anything about the characters because there's nothing there. Like, you could give them completely different names because there's nothing that ties them to their comic book versions.
And that's what I mean. Sometimes if you don't have that history with a character or a series, then you're not biased by its interpretation in the TV series.
Well, but if you're making them that bland, then why pay the licensing for an established character? Just do your own. Other shows like this. I mean, I've never watched any of Central, but this could probably all just fall right into some episodes of Supernatural when nobody would even notice.
Yeah, I don't know. They would do that by design, but maybe by just happenstance, happy accident. That this wasn't true to the Marvel comic series or the characters, but it had good production value, and maybe some people would enjoy it for that. So I'm just asking because I don't know anything about the characters.
Yeah. Well, to me, it kind of goes back to like when we were getting the superhero movies in the 90s and the 2000s, and they basically ignored all their history. Like you had a Punisher movie where he never had a skull. It's just
on his shirt. The actor had a skull. But
yes.
Logo.
He didn't wear a skull, and like that was the Dolph Lundgren version where even the writers were like, okay, how about in the very last scene we put a skull on the end of his knife? Nope.
Yeah.
Nope. And it's like they just didn't want anything at all to do with the comics.
Yeah.
So I mean, even going as far as changing, slightly changing the characters' names. So
okay.
To me, that's kind of like spitting in the face of the comic book fan, where you aren't even putting in any Easter eggs for the comic book fan, the person who doesn't, having a gas station named Roxxon. I mean, that's it, and that's one thing that I noticed. I'm sure there's probably stuff because I'm not a hardcore follower of these characters either. I've owned a handful of issues, that any of them have appeared in. So,
well, I think there's an argument to be made too for with increasing reboots. I think there's an argument of rip off as opposed to reboot. Where you make a rip off of something, you have to change it X amount. You know what I mean? And like eventually you'll get innovation through that. Where you just you will eventually come up with something new instead of just telling the same story over and over and over. And so I think that's the thing of like, why, in this case, why bother with the Son of Satan license? Just do a supernatural procedure show. You know what I mean?
Yeah, which is what they kind of did.
Yeah. And then it's like, and then at a certain point you've created your own thing, so maybe you'll get something new out of it.
Yeah, but it is, you would, I guess every comic book fan's dream is that at some point this character would have the chance to interact with some of the larger characters, Right. I mean, it's like Damien Helstrom showed up in some recent issues of the Avengers. Yeah. And it's like, and I'm talking comic book wise, not obviously the series wise. And the way this is written, it's like that'll never happen. And right. You don't have as much production per month with TVs and movies as you do with comics to get those types of crossovers. Right. But I just feel like it wouldn't even make sense, so. Should this character be able to show up in a Doctor Strange movie? Well, he should be able to, but right. he's not really, seriously mystical, magical. I mean, it's almost just like has powers as opposed to, he's some type of a magic user. So
right.
Or, yeah. So anyway, like I said, that we talked about that longer than I thought we would. So I just wanted to throw that out there for people who are thinking about watching the series. So,
well,
just be prepared. Yeah, be prepared for no, Easter eggs and nothing like that. So,
don't think we'll be talking about Helstrom season 5 someday?
I do not. If I were a betting man, I would bet against that. I would even bet against season 2.
Well, looks like we can probably see the future of that show.
Yeah.
But I think we're going to switch over now to talk about some of the future of DC Comics with their upcoming Future State event. And we'll have more information about this on the next previews episode that we do, because these will be in the January solicitations. But in January, DC is doing a 2-month event called Future State. And so apparently this is the remnants of what the 5G kind of reboot was going to be. And so everything is on hiatus, and we're getting some individual, like, I think they're calling them 2-issue miniseries, and then some oversized books, which are kind of the bi-weekly shipping books that we get now with like Batman and Flash and some of those books. So this is it seems a lot like the Convergence event from a few years ago when DC kind of moved offices It seems like behind the scenes they're using this time to kind of catch up on the monthly books. What I found interesting was, though, first off, just because of the reaction to that event, that they're doing something like this again. But then also, by my count, over the course of the 2 months for the superhero titles, there are only 56 books for both months. It looks like. And again, this will probably be clearer once the solicits come out and everything. But, for a long time, DC was 52 core superhero books every month. Now we're down to almost half of that with this event for 2 months, which I thought was pretty surprising. Now there's still going to be like Tom King's Rorschach book, that's Black Label. They've said Batman and Catwoman will still come out those months. So it's basically just like the in continuity sort of core superhero books that this is affecting. And again, we're getting a lot of, this was what 5G was supposed to be. So we are going to get the Luke Fox Batman in here. And, there's new, Jonathan Kent as Superman and that sort of thing. And then we are getting, we are still getting stories of Bruce Wayne and, Clark Kent Superman. But like Clark Kent Superman is like a gladiator on Warworld, it looks like. And Bruce Wayne Batman is sort of like is supposed to be dead and is leading some kind of resistance to get this group that rules Gotham. And so it's it's the typical DC thing of this is a future that might be that we all know won't be. It's sort of a Armageddon 2001 sort of thing like that, I guess. But that's a deep dive for some older readers there. But I just don't see this really having a lot of consequence and anything going forward. I feel like they had a lot of ideas. These things were in various stages of production, it sounds like, when it all got shut down. So they probably had some work done that they could, they probably paid people for and could publish anyway. Because again, the John Ridley, Luke Fox Batman is, part of this. But there is also some interesting stuff too going on where it looks like the Red X character from the Teen Titans cartoon back in the day will be appearing in the comics with this. So this will be like the first sort of mainstream DC Comics, sort of appearance for that character. And again, I wouldn't be surprised if that character, becomes part of the, regular continuity after this. I imagine there'll be some characters like that they'll kind of pick and choose from. And kind of throw into. I mean, there's something hidden in here, I'm sure, that will be a bigger part of DC later. That definitely seems to be their MO when they do something like this. Because, Jonathan Kent came out of the Convergence event when they did that. And so, hopefully we get some good stories out of this, if nothing else. But again, I don't see there being a lot of impact here. And, from the point of view of, working at the comic shop, the problem with this is, too, you give somebody a hiatus like this, they may not come back to the books once they start up again. It's like, a jumping on point is always a jumping off point for somebody else. So I'm not sure long term what we're going to get out of this necessarily. But, hopefully there's some cool characters and concepts introduced here.
As much as I enjoy connective tissue between events or just normal routine issues coming out, I will say Convergence had a lot of good stories, had good art. I didn't buy everything, but I bought quite a bit of it. I'm looking at the solicitation, and there's a lot of good creators here. It does definitely sound like it's I think the discerning reader should really take a look at it and not look at it as a jumping off point for the mainstream books.
Yeah, hopefully not.
So, I'm one of the people that I have to tell myself to do that. Just enjoy the reading for the reading, and there might be a nugget or two that comes out of it.
Yeah. The other thing too about buying everything, I think the other thing we're going to see here is retailers have long boxes of Convergence titles that never sold. They're cluttering up dollar boxes now. I think we're not going to see those same sales numbers that we saw with Convergence. I think retailers will remember that. And, I think if there's something, big that comes out of this, I'm going to bet it's under ordered because of that. I think if you want some of these future state books, definitely let us know at the store. so we can get it for you. But I wouldn't wait around, 6 months down the line to pick these books up if you're wanting one.
Right.
Yeah, it's kind of like the Jonathan Kent first appearance in the Superman Convergence 2 issue, and of course, anytime you introduce some new characters, there are going to be some supporting characters that get introduced as well, and there will certainly be some first appearances of those characters in these books as well. So, do you think? Okay, so you said something about this being catch up for artists. Do you think there's any possibility that this is actually because 5G was going to be the thing at DC, and do you think maybe they had been directing their writers and artists to start producing some of that material, then all of a sudden that somebody higher up said, you know what, forget 5G, let's just keep doing what we're doing, and now they're having to play catch up to go back
it could
set
be,
things in timelines.
Because reports have come out that they were in production on this stuff, and certain teams were told to stop, at some point. I mean, I think that's probably why we're getting this to begin with. Is because they probably already had some of this work done and were sitting on it and couldn't put it anywhere. You know what I mean? Just because it was out of continuity. So, yeah, but I mean, I think there'll be some interesting things. I think, there's the sort of big teaser image that they've released for this with a bunch of the characters, and you see it's sort of a Wonder Woman with, some gray streaks in her hair, but she's wearing Batman's utility belt, and it looks like she has, I would assume it looks like a piece of kryptonite around her, on a necklace. So it's like, what's the story with that? You know what I mean? And just, we have Jonathan Kent as Superman now and different things, and, Grifter's in there. So are they going to start incorporating the Wildstorm characters again now? Because I think they're doing that in the Batman book.
Well, yeah, Grifter reappeared in Batman 101. So it's his first appearance in Rebirth.
Yeah. And again, DC has a lot of characters like that they sit on too. Like, they have Wildstorm now, and we're going to get Milestone coming back. Acted like it was the same time this was supposed to be happening in February, but we'll see. I think some of that might be digital first too, or maybe they'll just consider Milestone its own sort of separate universe and it's its own thing. But yeah, DC owns a lot of stuff, and I feel like there's a lot of stuff they kind of sit on and don't really utilize like they should.
I mean, I've never got into the Wildstorm stuff. I mean, do you feel like any of that is actually any good?
Well, the Authority was great for a while. You know what I mean? Now, do I need a monthly Wildcats book? I don't know, maybe. You know what I mean? If you get the right team behind it. But again,
I guess any of them could be good, but
you just have these assets you're just sitting on and not doing anything with, and it's like, I feel like you have these other characters that, as long as they're not just like a Superman clone or something, bring something new to your universe. You know what I mean? And I feel like they never completely integrate that stuff either. I think, Shazam is probably the closest that they have done that with. And there are still times where they, the whole Shazam family kind of disappears for a while and that kind of thing. But, like, why aren't, some of these characters on the Justice League or something? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, why aren't they featured more prominently in this universe? And I'm sure, Milestone will end up being its own thing, probably just because of all the rights issues and the deals with the creators and that kind of thing. But again, a few years ago, they started to bring them back. They were in Justice League and a couple other spots, and there was the Static book with the New 52 relaunch. So
I just feel like maybe Jim Lee's like, okay, I'll let you write this book, but you got to bring in Grifter. Or here, I'll let you write this book, but we got to.
Well, that's the thing. I'm like, why wouldn't he be pushing for more Wildstorm stuff? When it's what he's created, and he's been in the company for so long now. And it's kind of running things.
Wasn't that Captain Atom Armageddon? Wasn't that a crossover where he went into the Wildstorm universe?
Yeah, that was.
I remember enjoying it. I just can't remember exactly the storyline.
Right. But yeah, and again, they had some of the, those books with the New 52 also. What was there? It was the Voodoo book and Grifter and stuff like that they did. But, then they just kind of disappear for a while, too. So it's like, why not have these characters pop up, here and there. So, but yeah, we'll see what we get out of this Future State event. And again, we'll probably talk about this a little more on the next previews episode that we do. So we want to talk about everybody's favorite book, Vigilante. We got quite a bit to go over this time.
Hey, I am going to say that here, after Wolfman's left the book, I've actually enjoyed it more.
Are you?
Yeah. So I actually feel like it's more like what I would expect out of this type of a book. So I feel like it's getting better. And on these issues, the last, when we reviewed the 4 previous issues, I thought those were solid. So I think Paul Cooperberg has done a really, really good job. So I think he continues doing that. As we were going to discuss, they're kind of wordy. But,
yeah.
I think there's more a reflection of the time.
Exactly.
So,
That's what I was going to say. Is it's a reflection of the time, and I agree with you, Scott. Not only because I listened to you say that at the last episode that I wasn't on, in reading the issues I'm covering today, I seen exactly what you're talking about, and it just got me thinking that I had to look it up to verify, but Paul Cooperberg, he actually wrote with Todd Smith as the artist the 4-issue Peacemaker miniseries back in like '88, which was a few years after this, but very similar character as Vigilante.
Well, better pick that up now before the Peacemaker show starts up.
It's too late.
That shoots up. Oh, is it?
Yeah, it's too late. If you know what's happening, then it's too late. So
yeah.
I've got mine pulled out.
Well, you're probably not going to sell yours, though, are you?
No, probably not.
Yeah, we'll see. What's the point?
Well, you never know. My wife may sell them. How about that?
Sell them now, and in about 6 months, you can buy them again for about half what you sold them.
So we're going to start off this time talking about Vigilante Annual #1. So this is by Paul Cooperberg with Dennis Cowan as the penciler. And there's also a special assist by Joe Bruzowski with Rick Magyar and Carlos Garzon as inkers. And this story is entitled Guilty Until Proven.
Mm-hmm.
So it starts off with a guy kind of going to his apartment, and he kind of runs afoul of a hitman leaving a crime scene. And he falls down the stairs and knocks himself out, and the hitman kind of plants the gun on him and makes it look like, they were feuding neighbors, and he just kind of snapped and killed them. And so, later on, we come across Vigilante in the story, who gets a call. Oh, and just real quick to point out, too, this is, there's a real quick blurb at the beginning. It says this is a tale of times past. So this is Adrian Chase still as Vigilante, still operating as Vigilante, whereas in the monthly book, he is a judge now, and we are dealing with another Vigilante. And so we are kind of talking about this in the order it was published. So this, was not status quo at the time for the monthly Vigilante book.
So this occurred probably sometime before issue like 19.
Yeah.
For those playing at home.
Right. So Adrian gets a call from Marcia saying her friend has been accused of murder. This is the guy we were shown at the beginning of the book. And, he's been set up by this hitman. And then we realized that the man that was killed had ties with this big mobster. And when he learns of the death, he's upset. He wants the hitman killed, which to them means this innocent neighbor, who everyone thinks is the killer, that, they're going to be going after him in prison now. And so Vigilante is trying to help out and find the guy. Meanwhile, we are kind of shown this guy sort of going through the process of being arrested and booked and everything, and trying to tell people, hey, he's innocent. And of course, it's, jaded officers and everyone who are just like, yeah, everybody says they're innocent. I'm sure you've never heard that, Mike. But, he really is in this case. But again, everyone just assumes he's just trying to be let go. There is a page I wanted to bring up. What is it? Page 21. So we have Vigilante fighting in this. I'm not sure if this is a skyscraper from earlier, but it's been a very tall building regardless, fighting these mobsters, and he gets knocked out the window. There's a nice sequence of him falling out of the window and kind of twisting through the air, which a lot of artists don't draw that kind of detail. It's usually just almost like a stat of the same pose going down the building. But there's also a sequence where he survives by sort of slowing his fall on a flagpole. And then we kind of cut back to, I believe his name's Charlie, the innocent man who's in jail. But then like 3 or 4 later, we catch back up with Vigilante, and he's still sort of hanging by the flagpole. And he drops and kind of tucks and hits the top of a car. And he survives this, fall, even though talking about how hurt he is at the time when he hits. I feel like this is about as plausible as a similar scene in the Dark Knight movie where Batman and Rachel fall out of a window and sort of slide down and then hit a car. I don't think a car is making your fall that well as it's portrayed here and in the Dark Knight movie. But again, I think we're also sort of dealing with Vigilante's quasi-healing factor, with the weird supernatural-esque origin that never really comes in any other way. But then we have, Vigilante kind of fighting these sort of mob hitmen and goons and stuff, kind of working his way up. And we keep cutting back to Charlie in prison. And finally, we see one of the mobster's men got himself arrested intentionally to take out Charlie in jail. And somehow was able to sneak a knife into the cell.
In his foot, in his shoe, yeah.
Yeah, it was like in his shoe or something, I think he said.
Or sock, or yeah.
And it's like, and I was expecting, I'm like, oh, what was he able to sneak in when they say that? And I'm like, this is a pretty good sized knife. Like, I don't know how they would have missed that.
Oh, you'd be surprised.
Okay. But Vigilante shows up at just, right as he's about to be killed. And basically tells him, you're locked in a cell, you've got a knife, I've got a gun. And the would-be killer was like, whoa, I'm just cleaning my nails with this. I'm not with a knife. Yeah, I was like, oh, okay. And so at the end of the story, though, Charlie is still in prison. Vigilante just kind of gives him some advice to give to his lawyer, and then calls Marsha and tells her basically that everything's okay. But, we do realize that Charlie was, we learn from Marsha that Charlie was released. After, this incident. Mm-hmm. And Marsha's kind of recounting to Chase what the Vigilante did as he's listening to her on his couch still wearing the suit. So yeah, just sort of a side story here with Adrian still as Vigilante. Doesn't tie in really to the monthly storyline directly. I don't know if Cooperberg just wanted to go back and tell a story with Adrian maybe, or maybe they had the monthly thing plotted out too tightly that the annual didn't work in well with the schedule. But,
or they just needed that 5th week book and chose Vigilante. So
yeah. So now, getting back into the monthly book, we're going to look at issue 23 by Paul Cooperberg, Todd Smith, and Rick Magyar. And this issue is called Many Unhappy Returns. And we start with the shot of a newspaper kind of talking about Vigilante's reign of terror. And so, again, this is the new sort of unhinged Vigilante. This is not Adrian Chase that we've been dealing with. This is the whoever took his costume and is now running around as Vigilante.
You mean his very well hidden costume when he discarded it?
Yeah, just threw it in the top of the trash can and walked away. Walked into his apartment. Again, crazy.
Hey, and we come back to that by the time we get done talking this evening. So
yeah, we do.
Mm-hmm.
And so we are introduced to a new sort of I don't know. I almost want to say Johnny Cochran style lawyer, but I don't know if that even goes far enough with this guy. This guy really likes to kind of lay it on thick in court. But yeah, his name was McDade, and going into the courthouse or into the courtroom, he tries to get Adrian's goat about the case they're about to try. I think basically just so to kind of get Chase riled up as the judge so he can say that Chase was biased against his client or something. But then we see Chase is all worked up about something, and we realize this is kind of going back to when he told Marcia, which I don't think we actually saw in the book. We're seeing it here, where he tells Marcia that he was the vigilante and what's happened and, doing with the death of his family and everything, but how he's given it up when he became a judge. Again, I don't see how that makes it any better. He was still a lawyer when he was running around doing this stuff. In his head, it seems to, though, and just kind of letting her know that, hey, there's this new crazy vigilante that's out there is not him, and he needs to stop him. Again, it's a lot to lay on somebody.
Yeah.
And, I think it just kind of shows the flaws in his thinking. And again, it's not like there's ever a real justification for being a vigilante and killing people, but even within the book's own sort of logic, I think it falls apart a little bit. Then we're also introduced to Dave Winston, the bailiff, for Adrian. And again, we got to start filling out this supporting cast a little bit again because we've lost, some main characters here. So we've got him in here now. And we have Marcia going to talk to a therapist where she needs someone to talk to. And that is Dr. I think this is Knopf. Knopf. I'm not sure how to pronounce that exactly. Knopf for those at home. But she kind of tells him, hey, I have this friend who was the vigilante. And she starts to say Adrian and stops herself even. But again, it wouldn't take much to figure out who she's talking about. And we'll get into that later.
I'm just amazed at how much Dr. Knopf looks like Tony Stark of the same time period.
He does.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Tony Stark had more of a mullet back then? Was that this, or was that later on? I feel like he had that kind of going on back then too.
I'm trying. Yeah, I don't really remember mullet Tony Stark. So.
Well, later on, then we get this. We get a scene in Central Park of this woman being attacked, which again, recurring theme in this book. But then the electrocutioner shows up again and saves the woman and viciously electrocutes the assailants. And then we are shown the Midtown South Police Headquarters in Manhattan, where they've got this sort of a vigilante task force working to catch this new vigilante, who, as far as they know, is still the same guy it's always been. Then we go back to Chase's courtroom, where McDade, the lawyer we were introduced to, points out some, I don't know if you would call these technicalities. Basically, find some loopholes to declare a mistrial with his client. And again, it seems like things that really should have been handled at the beginning, early on with the arrest and everything. And then we have a scene of Chase going out at night. Now, not as the vigilante, but just sort of on a motorcycle and a leather jacket trying to find this new vigilante and stop him. And we are shown McDade kind of going out of the town with his date this night. And turns out their driver is this new vigilante. And I think, is this the first time he's used kind of a disguise here?
I don't remember.
Done that before, but it's going to become a reoccurring thing with this one.
Yeah, several times in these issues for sure. So
he kills McDade, and there's 2 gunshots. So you assume he kills his date too, and kind of leaves their car at the docks there. Then Chase stops at a diner in the middle of the night and runs into some cops who are talking about the electrocutioner. And Chase realizes he's been so caught up in what he's doing that he kind of forgot about the electrocutioner and kind of thought that guy was done. But here he is, shown back up now. And this issue ends really weird. It ends very abruptly, where Chase is kind of taking off into the night now and talking about this woman, and just kind of cuts off mid-sentence. And it almost feels like, I don't know if I'm missing a page in my copy, But the last thing he says is her name was Mona Simpson and she was 20, and that's it.
Dot, dot, dot.
Yeah, dot, dot, dot,
Yeah.
then letters page for me.
Yep.
So.
Well, I saw it both the physical copy and the digital copy, and it's the exact same way. So
Okay.
it goes straight to the ledger page. So yeah.
Oh, you know what? I was looking at the digital copy for the annual because again, mine's put away. But I think, yeah, I saw some of what I think Mike was talking about previously too, where the colors do look very washed out on the digital version.
Yeah.
I think it is a thing of, the newsprint was way more absorbent, and we're dealing with backlit screens now too. That's the other thing with monitors and things. It's always going to lighten it up a little bit with that too. So I think, yeah, that is definitely something kind of going on with these sort of new versions and reprints we look at now.
So something that's important, well, I guess important for this story arc from 23, is that in that second court case with McDade, the person he was the lawyer for, the attorney for, was Trinidad Santiago.
Oh, yeah.
And Trinidad Santiago is we're going to learn that he has a place in the Catskills, and that place becomes important as we move forward in this story.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, I should have talked about that case. Yeah, sorry about that. That sets up a lot of stuff we're going to talk about here.
Yeah, so that's.
So yeah, he is the sort of drug lord that McDade gets off on a technicality.
And I just mentioned it because I know when I was doing my notes for the last two issues we're going to cover, there's a recurring theme that in those notes. So
I noticed in this issue we had a letter in the letters column. We had and there may have been more, but I just noticed T.M. Maple. He was one of the most prolific letter writers.
We're getting so much T.M. Maple in these letter columns. Someone's going to complain about it later on. There's going to be a letter complaining about T.M. Maple later on.
The Mad Maple.
Yeah.
We ready to move into the next issues then, or have any other comments on?
No, I think so. I mean, there's a lot. This is basically one big story at this point too.
Mm-hmm.
I think we kind of can look at it as a whole.
Yeah, I mean, these issues, is like not necessarily the annual, but the 5 issues that we covered would probably now would have just constitute a trade. So
yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of overlap, but the issues I covered was Vigilante 24 and 25. And on 24, one thing new is the cover copy announces more pages, no ads. And if you read the inner cover, the Meanwhile column by Dick Giordano, he explains what that is all about. The new initiative where these higher paper quality, the Baxter books they call them, have now gone to no ads and have more actual reading pages. I'm not sure the exact page count, but it did increase as a result the price of the comic to $1.50. And I think it was before $1.25, wasn't it?
Yep.
Yeah. So anyway,
so your dollar's not going as far now with the Vigilante as it was the month prior.
But it's an old but effective trick in the comic industry where they bump up the price, add some page count, and then a while later they'll drop that page count back down.
Well, it's still a 32-page comic. So just they've replaced the ad pages with comic pages.
Right.
So, yeah.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Yep.
And I'll get to the backstories or the extra content and how much I liked it. But so Vigilante number 24, which was cover dated December of 1985. It was again written by Paul Kupperberg, drawn by Todd Smith, and inked by Rick Magyar. Todd Smith is the new permanent penciler. I didn't know that because until I read this, and I had to go back and read the previous issues that Dan just covered. But it sounds like they were pretty happy about landing a consistent penciler. The name of the story is Mother's Day. And in the opening scene, there's a shocked and grieving widow named Helen Sherman. And she just learned that in the hospital emergency room that her daughter Nancy had just died from stab wounds in an attack. On her way home on the subway, she overhears a couple of punks bragging about stabbing a girl to death at Times Square. And she's aghast and kind of makes the connection that these guys must be the guys that did it, and she follows them off the train and vows to bring them to justice. So meanwhile, the replacement vigilante is who we still don't know who he is. He's roughing up a guy that, he's treating him sort of like a street gangster, whatever, to get information from him, but he looks more like a homeless person than a criminal. So it was like, really, wow, it was pretty brutal. And his whole intent in whooping on him was to get information about the location of this drug lord named Trinidad Santiago. And I don't know, has he been named earlier? Dan, did you cover that in the previous issue?
I should have, but I didn't. Scott brought it up.
Oh, well, I couldn't remember in my skim of it whether he was even named.
Yeah, this was the court case in the previous issue that really sets up the rest of what we're going to be talking about with this storyline.
Gotcha. So Adrian Chase is back at his Greenwich Village home supervising the renovations after his battle with Nightwing back in issue 21. And he's reflecting on how he needs to find this new vigilante who is way more extreme than him. And, Adrian has this new sense of morality that he can't let this guy, outdo his vigilantism. I don't know. And he's also kind of regretful about his past and how much he's lost, including Marcia. At the police station, we learned that there's 4 more victims of this new vigilante, and two detectives. One of them is this Lieutenant Stein, who's kind of a recurring character now. They head out for the scenes, and then we get to the court. This is the arraignment hearing for the 2 young smart aleck youngsters that were bragging about killing a girl on in Times Square or whatever. But anyway, these guys are being arraigned, and their attorney, though, points out that there's insufficient evidence for them to have been arrested in the first place. And all the prosecution really had was Mrs. Sherman's testimony that she overheard them bragging about killing someone. But of course, that's biased, and she's because she's the victim's mother. And Judge Chase agrees and throws out the case. And by the way, they refer to her testimony as hearsay, making it inadmissible, but that's not really accurate. Hearsay is when you testify to what someone else said. But if I were to hear Dan confess to doing something, that would still be admissible. That's not hearsay.
Thank you for pointing that out.
Dan's one of those guys, you just never know what he's done. You just have to really keep your ears open. But anyway, just to clear that up. So Mrs. Sherman is really ticked off, and she storms the bench. And ironically, she's accusing Judge Chase, of the same things he used to accuse the powers that be back before he was a judge of, it being an unfair justice system. I mean, she was using some of the same terms and language, and it was just sort of an ironic twist. She threatens that she's going to make these 2 murderers pay when she leaves the courtroom. Now, I know she did have a little sit down when she was calmed down and talked to to Judge Chase and his bailiff, which I got to tell you, I don't care how sympathetic a judge may be. If you charge the bench, I'm sorry, you're probably spending the night in jail, even if you are a mad, mother or father of a victim. So
here, can we hold on for just a second here? Just with that scene where she's talking to Chase and the bailiff. So what is this? So the top of page 13. There's something going on with the art here that I kind of noticed. So on the top of page 13, we got sort of a close-up here of Adrian's face, and there's some kind of shading technique going on here.
Yeah.
Which I thought for a second was Conte crayon, is that sort of look. But if you look real close at it, those are ink lines.
Yeah.
So there's this sort of crazy scribbling, and we'll see this later on, too, in future issues.
The very next page.
Yeah, but there's this weird, it just looks really labor-intensive for like a monthly book.
It's like when I'm trying to scratch out something I wrote, and I just use the ink pen to do little swirlies.
But
I've never seen that before.
It's really contained, and it looks like it's a little lighter on the eyes, the white section of the eyes. But it looks like a bunch of scribbles. And again, I'm not saying it's juvenile scribbles. It just has that kind of feel of like done very quickly.
Right.
But it's really contained to the shading on the face there. But yeah, I just kind of glanced over it at first, but then I'm like, wait, what was that? With the R, and it's just like that would drive me nuts trying to, and it's pretty even, like it works pretty well for what they're doing, effectiveness, visually, but yeah, just like I don't think I've ever seen anybody do that before, especially in a comic book.
Well, you've seen a lot more art than me, but I've never seen that.
Yeah, I think I'd see pointillism before that, but yeah, we also have an example of it on the next page too.
Those couple of panels with that type of inking sort of reminded me of Mike Grell. Not that he really inked that way, but it just seemed like that heavy shading. It just reminded me of his art. So yeah, good observation there, Dan. So in the next scene, the electrocutioner, he's popping his head up again. He's mopping up 3 armed robbers, and we learned that although the electrocutioner is tracking down Vigilante, the new murderous Vigilante, he's also not forgetting about his main target, Trinidad Santiago. So Santiago's got a couple people after him. And Marcia King, in another really quick scene, she's seeing that same Tony Stark looking therapist who is you can almost see him wringing his hands because he's indicating that, oh yeah, I know, because she's the way she's described her friend is that he's probably Adrian Chase, who is the Vigilante, and he appears to have some nefarious plans with that knowledge, which would be pretty unethical based on his type of work. So Judge Chase checks on Mrs. Sherman, gives her a call, and her son answers, and he says, yeah, I'm worried about her. She left the house after dinner. She's been acting strange. And so Chase goes to see if he can track her down. He sees where she went, which was a gun shop to buy a pistol. And then he finds her approaching the apartment building where those 2 young guys that presumably killed her daughter live, and he tries to stop her. She actually shoots Chase in the shoulder, orange blood and everything, which amazes me because, this is a non-code book, but they don't have any red blood still. Shoots him, and she enters the building to find both those guys smoking some weed, it looked like. Wow. And one of them gets away as she shoots up the place. And as she corners the other one, Chase actually enters the scene and talks her out of killing him. And then I will admit, I thought these 2 guys did this. I thought they actually killed the woman's daughter. But in this sort of dramatic turn of events, Chase informs Mrs. Sherman that these boys weren't her daughter's killers after all, as the real killer was arrested for an unrelated crime and confessed to her daughter's murder. So any comments about that main story here at the end of it?
Yeah, so I get the twist at the end where they're not guilty, but what are they talking about at the beginning of the story if they didn't commit that specific crime?
Exactly. I mean, Chase was overly sympathetic or overly, they're okay. They didn't do it, ma'am, but they did something because they were obviously talking about how they stabbed somebody. Unless I'm missing, maybe it was some metaphorically speaking, terms that they were using. I don't know.
Maybe they were just talking about a movie they watched. Maybe they just watched one of the Death Wish movies or something. So
I think they oversold what they wanted us to believe. They oversold that they wanted us to believe these guys did it.
Yeah. Speaking of Death Wish, I was listening to the soundtrack to that as I was reading these today. You want something to listen to with your Vigilante reading?
I bet.
One thing I did like about this issue is that introduction of that psychiatrist. I mean, it's pretty clear that character is going to become important later on. And I like that they are introducing him early. So it's not like one of those things where you, like my wife and I have been we've been binging some Netflix shows, and like the last 2 or 3 shows that we've watched, and like the 7th or 8th episode of the season where there's 1 or 2 left, they introduce a new character who ends up being the person behind it all instead of having them be present before. That kind of irritates me. So it's nice to have this character show up now, not just be part of like one story arc and then he's gone. He's going to be here. Apparently, I haven't read anything, past what we did tonight. He's going to be here for a while. And then even in a future issue, we're going to get some more of his backstory. So it reminds me a lot of Claremont in his writing, like on X-Men, where he would pop in a character and then you wouldn't see that character again, sometimes for a couple of years, but then he would come back to that character. So
yeah, it's you mentioned earlier about Wolfman's writing wasn't the best. I mean, we've all seen some good writing by Wolfman, whether it be Titans or or even going back to the 70s and his Werewolf, what was it, Werewolf by Night, that series. I can't remember what that. I remember reading a couple of them when I was a kid, but
there
anyway,
was a series Werewolf by Night, so that's the correct title. So
I thought he did that, but he seemed distracted, and maybe he was good with the overall plot, but this series as a whole seems to be really loose on what it wants to be, and I think it's improving in the last 4 or 5 issues quite a bit. So, and maybe that's just because he's relinquishing some of the more direct writing over to Paul Kupperberg.
are you going to talk about the backup story?
I just had a quick sentence, really. It was just that it was like a 5-page bonus story by Kupperberg again and Cowan, Dennis Cowan, and it's basically to make up for that extra 25 cents you're paying. And we get an inside look at this Detective Stein's dysfunctional home life, and we also see him stop a robbery at his local grocery because he had to run out to get milk or something for his wife. But it was a good little vignette. I mean, I liked it because it, in a way, he reminds me of Harvey Bullock. Maybe not the cigar smoking detective, but he's a weather worn police detective. So I like that little inside peek into his life.
So we're going to be getting more of those sort of backup stories as we go here, and we're getting a lot of new characters introduced. Do you guys feel like they are feeding these characters as suspects for who the new Vigilante could be?
I didn't whenever I was reading these.
Okay.
At least not for this story for sure.
Yeah, because I don't feel like Stein is in good enough shape to be the
No,
yeah.
Oh, he's a smoker.
But I feel like
I know that I could easily go to Wikipedia and be spoiled, but I'm purposely avoiding finding out who the new Vigilante is. So,
spoiler alert.
I think. What's that?
Spoiler alert.
Well, it's a slow burn. I like slow burns, unless they just burn out before you even get to be surprised.
I like these little stories because we get some more information about some of these characters that are apparently going to become important supporting characters.
Right.
We do now know that like Stein is apparently a good cop, and there was a comment made earlier about him not being able to talk to his wife, and here's where we kind of see that. Like here he has just literally blown a guy's brains out, and then he goes home and it's like he can't talk to her about that. They don't communicate, so he's having to deal with that. So okay, I don't know what DC considers an ad.
Mm-hmm, right.
Okay, but like the page before this little extra starts, we have this. I would call this an ad for The Outsiders.
As long no ads that aren't DC related.
There we go.
What that is, because there's one in the next one I want to talk about too.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know that house ads count, but it probably should because that's a full page.
Yeah, and there's actually a subscription ad too towards the back. So yeah.
Call them out on Scott. Call them out.
All right.
Yeah, call them out 35 years later.
Yeah.
I want my money back.
But like none of these people are still working at DC.
Yeah. Give me that 25 cents extra I paid for that book, so.
All right, so issue 25. That's our halfway mark, isn't it, guys?
Yeah, it is.
All right.
25 issues and an annual.
Yep. So once again, by Kupperberg, Smith, and Magyar. And I know that we talked about this before we started recording. I like this cover by Dan Day. I had to look him up. He's a Canadian artist. But he is a kind of a diminutive framed vigilante. And Scott, who did you think he maybe was the new
Well, okay, so like whenever I was flipping through covers and I see this cover down the road after Vigilante has given it up, I mean, the frame is thin enough that it's like the thought crossed my mind. Well, gosh, the Vigilante could be a woman. It could be Marcia.
Yeah.
Right.
You know.
Yeah.
So
I don't disagree. It's that small frame. It's just,
Mhm.
but I like the design of that cover.
It's also
better than something.
It's also the angle of the figure on that cover too. I think leads to some of that.
yeah.
Yeah. So
Straight on shot.
we enter this story with a young man being interrogated at the 72nd precinct in New York, and by interrogated I mean beaten and tased. And ironically, I don't know if you guys picked up on this, they went to the trouble of reading him his rights to be by the book. Then they go to straight up torture to get him to confess to something he didn't do. They seem to think because he had a significant amount of cash on his person that he has to be slinging dope. And I mean this kind of scene resonates these days because I mean this guy's a black guy and these are white cops, and you know the profiling stuff, the police brutality stuff. I could see if this was written today, there'd probably be some sort of article written about how on the mark they were with this story. So
Okay. Now I thought he was Latino.
well, he could be by the, you know what, he could be by the hairstyle and stuff, but his name is like what is it? It's not a Latino name.
Okay.
It's Daryl Perkins.
Daryl something, right?
Yeah, and yeah, but either way, he's either black or brown skinned, and these guys were but you know, without spoiling my own review here, these guys get their just desserts. What was that, Dan?
Just back to what Scott was saying real quick. I do believe he is African American just because of the specific tone they used on the coloring. I feel like Latinos at this time were colored a lighter brown. Again, we're dealing with mid 80s production. There's a limited color palette they used. There's also sort of a thing DC did back then that doesn't age very well either, where Middle Easterns were colored like a tone of gray to kind of differentiate them from other dark-skinned people. Again, it didn't age very well, but again, it was just sort of a shorthand with the limited amount of colors they had back then, you know, with the printing process and everything. So
that makes sense.
But you know what?
Thanks, Dan.
yeah.
Until Scott brought that up, though, I didn't even notice that he didn't have like a afro hair. It was more.
Right.
It's
the curly hair.
like he had to relax. But back in the 80s, I mean, there was black guys would have the relaxer to straighten their hair. So getting back to this, we had a quick change of scene here to the title page of the story, which, by the way, is called Cruel and Unusual Punishment. Very apt. Vigilante standing over his latest victim, and he's cornered by several police, but unbelievably, but because comics, he acrobatically does a couple of rolls and
Can we talk about that roll for a second?
Yeah.
That middle is so cartoonish. Comic book, and I get it, but wow, that just reeks of Deadline to me. Where in the middle we just have the head spinning around like Bugs Bunny style or something, and then back up to his feet.
Yeah, I don't know enough about artistry to be able to describe that, but I thought the same thing. It was like, but he ends up escaping or evading the police by laying down all this cover fire, which I don't know if he intended to not kill anyone, but I'm surprised he didn't, because there's all kinds of shots and zings and kapings and blasting out windows of the car where the cops are barricaded behind. But Detective Stein, who we've mentioned earlier, he arrives and the search begins. Vigilante is in this area and they get the helicopter involved and they're trying to find him. He's able to shoot somebody in the helicopter even, but ultimately he actually avoids capture by disguising himself as one of the cops. Of course, he keeps his goggles on because, you know, he's Vigilante.
Well, that's what he did in the limo of McDade too in the previous issue. It's just he's just sort of throwing stuff on real quick, it seems like.
Right.
But again, I kind of like that as like an MO of this version of Vigilante as opposed to Chase. You know, He didn't really do that, so we are seeing something a little different with this version.
So on the news, Chase learns, and the new vigilante learns that the about the police torture of Daryl Perkins, and vigilante is he's shown watching the news in his rundown apartment, and he's got brown hair. So that's like the first clue. I don't remember ever seeing the color of his hair before. Do you?
We did once before
Yeah, I
in
think
a
we
scene. Yeah.
Okay.
It was a very similar scene, same angle shot, looking back as he's reading on the screen or whatever. Yeah.
Okay. So then we go to after a quick scene of Trinidad Santiago, the drug lord, and his crew hidden in the Catskill Mountains. We find another torture scene. This time it's the electrocutioner trying to out vigilante, and trying to get the location of Santiago from one of his associates, and he succeeds but kills the guy anyway. So next, the two bad cops that tortured Daryl Perkins, they're arrested while they're in the gym getting dressed or whatever, in the changing room, whatever. They're arrested by Internal Affairs, and when Vigilante hears this on the news, he was angry. I mean, I was surprised because originally his reaction was, "Yeah, that punk had it coming." But then when he finds out that these cops are bad cops because this kid was innocent, he's like, he's all in. He's going to get these bad cops. So these two bad cops post bail, and they do what anyone does when they post bail, and they want to cool off. They go to the strip joint, and Vigilante follows them, and in this pretty tense couple of pages, Vigilante waits for the right opportunity to kill the cops. He's hiding behind like the backstage curtains and where the strippers dancing and stuff, and he's waiting to take the shot. But when he finally does, the bullets, it's almost, it was so funny. She's disrobing, pulling her bra or her top off, and just as she throws it, the bullet goes through the bra, which deflects the bullet. And I'm thinking, okay, this must be a bra made of chainmail or something, because I mean, really,
she was a blonde Red Sonja, obviously.
Absolutely.
The
yeah, there was. It did look like
by the brassiere.
So, anyway, a melee kicks off as the cops return fire, and Vigilante catches a bullet. Any comments so far, Dan?
Real quick, right before the strip club scene, we get another sort of half disguise from Vigilante, dressed up like a cab driver with a cap on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I also want to point out, though, that this is apparently the most elaborate strip club. They have a backstage with a catwalk and sandbags. Like, are they putting on productions of Hamlet here at this?
Yeah, I know. I was like, this is on Broadway or something. I mean, they've got its multi-stories. I mean,
this is like they go all out at this place.
Hey, it's not Doomerock.
The all the costume changes and stuff by Vigilante is actually kind of reminding me a little bit about Moon Knight, because you had that early Sienkiewicz, Doug Monk who did that? I think so. I mean, he does a lot of that. He's dressed up as a cabbie. He dressed up like this. He dresses up like that. But it feels a little bit like that to me. So.
Well, what it reminded me of was, geez, this is probably almost 20 years ago now. There was a Spider-Man action figure line called maybe like Adventure Hero or something like that, but it was like Amigo style Spider-Man, and he came with different outfits like fisherman or basketball player that you could put on the Spider-Man, and that's what this reminds me of.
Well, we have it was kind of an awkward place to put this little interlude right in the middle of the throwdown at the strip club, but we get another scene with Marcia and her therapist, and he's connecting the dots, or maybe it's just the therapist. I think he's just starting to connect the dots between her, Adrian Chase, and his former alter ego Vigilante. Then we quickly go back to the club and the game of cat and mouse, where Vigilante's up in the rafters. They're in these scaffolding and things, and he's twice wounded now, and he finally puts it into the cop that's shooting at him. And then the other one's kind of hanging from the ledge, a high ledge in the rafters, and then Vigilante pretty much says, just lets him fall whenever his fingers wear out. I want to say again, this orange blood thing was bugging me. I'm like, all of this stuff, this is non-code. It's mature readers, and they can't color the blood red.
Yeah, I'm not sure what that's about. Has that happened previously in the series? Have you guys noticed that?
It's been in both this issue and the previous one, number 24. And I'm number 25. I'm looking at on digital, and 24 I have the actual copy. So it's not the digital version only. But I mean, it didn't distract me from it too much. I made a note here that I agreed with your assessments, both of you, but I think particularly Scott, that the writing has improved markedly, and I enjoyed this issue. The bonus story was by Kupperberg again, and Callan, and Alfredo Alcala. This Dave Winston, he's another supporting character, sort of a new one. He's the bailiff. He's like, yeah, he's like his own little story here. It's like Walker, Texas. He's got his own little thing. He's trailing a hitman. This is a bailiff now. This is usually a job that's reserved for the people that actually retire from being a cop, and they just want to make a little extra money standing guard in a courtroom. But anyway, he's trailing this hitman. He's got his sources and everything that he uses to find this out. And as he's tailing him, we learn about his family's legacy in his monologue as NYPD officers, but his inability to join the force due to a heart issue. And in the end, he stops the hit, even though he's just a bailiff. He did a pretty good job of stopping this guy from shooting his target. So again, another nice little bonus story, very enjoyable. And overall, I'm glad I got to review this issue here.
Just jumping back to talk about the house ads real quick on there. This has got a DC ad for the 1986 wall calendar. And this is something I'm actually looking for because December, or the last one here, is Ambush Bug, and I'm trying to collect all the appearances of Ambush Bug. And so this is like one of the things I still have to track down. And it shows up on eBay now and then, but again, if it's in good shape, it's usually pretty pricey.
Speaking of Ambush Bug, Dan, when I went back to Utah, I got to get my mail and wear my Ambush Bug T-shirt.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
Which you can also get at tpublic.com/user/detective651.
That's right.
That's right. Well, that's my 2 issues to cover, gents.
All right. Well, what are we at? We're an hour. We're a little over an hour, and we got 2 issues left to go here. So let's see what we can do, right? So issue 26. So the Vigilante catches up with that snitch back from one of the previous issues that I think was one of Mike's issues, and reveals to Vigilante that Santiago has a place up in upstate New York, someplace in the Catskills. Great. So now we move forward. We got Adrian Chase, and he's doing some of the work in a workshop that used to be done by JJ, and actually even mentions JJ. Which had me starting to think that they were going to go one way with some of the reveals of either the Electrocutioner or the new Vigilante that didn't actually pan out.
Yeah.
But he's doing some of the repair work that was usually left for JJ. And he's also done some digging that again JJ would have done on the computer, and learned that guess what? Santiago has a place in the Catskills. So now the Vigilante knows there's the Catskills. Adrian Chase knows about the Catskills. So we go back to Chase's office, and he contacts Alan to see if he can basically handle his caseload for a few days while he goes on vacation. But lo and behold, Alan is also planning on a vacation for those couple of days. And we're going to assume at this point that they're all going to the Catskills. So next, we pop over to the Electrocutioner, and the Electrocutioner basically interrupts this pickup and speaks to the guy who was actually flown in on a helicopter. He kills the one guy, and the helicopter guy says, "Hey, I'm not paid to fight people. He's in upstate New York in the Catskills." So now we have the Electrocutioner knows he's in the Catskills. Adrian Chase knows he's in the Catskills. The Vigilante knows he's in the Catskills. So where's this issue going to go? It's going to the Catskills. All right. So Chase gets a ride home from Winston, who is the bailiff, and then when Winston, basically noticing that things are not right with Chase, offers to talk, Chase snaps at him again. So at this point, Adrian Chase is getting a little bit unhinged. Um, then we basically see the vigilante is en route. Now he's made it to the Catskills, and he's kind of on foot looking for some things, and he runs into two police officers named Bert and Ernie. Really?
Oh
Okay,
my gosh.
really? Okay. But I had to read that twice. Did I really just read Bert and Ernie? But all right. So anyway, there's a police report that gets put out that the vigilante was spotted in the Catskills. All right. So now we go back to it's Trinidad Santiago, right? I keep wanting to reverse the names. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So we go back to Santiago's place, and he's noticing all the extra foot traffic around his place. And of course, he's watching all the extra cops and stuff. He increases the guard on his estate, and lo and behold, Vigilante is also watching Santiago. All right.
Real quick, this is my favorite vigilante disguise on this page, where he takes out the hunter and just throws on the red plaid cap.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't put the shirt on yet. He just has the cap. I kind of want to customize a figure of that.
Let's see. So, all right. So Chase arrives in the Catskills and goes into a diner and learns that, hey, the vigilante has been spotted. So he quickly leaves the diner. All right, and then we go back to the vigilante where he continues to take out some of Santiago's other guards, and he gets a hold of a walkie-talkie, which you think would be referenced at some point in the near future, but it never comes back up.
Yeah,
But-
it doesn't. I forgot all about that.
Well, and I hadn't thought about it till I was going back through the notes. So I don't know. Maybe they left it there. They were going to go one way and ran out of pages or something. So
It almost looks like one of those satellite phones instead of a
Yeah.
walkie-talkie.
yeah, but they were communicating back and forth with each.
Right,
other.
yeah.
So I'm assuming it's actually
Yeah, just a bad design, I think, for a two-way
Well,
radio.
I had some walkie-talkies at one time that kind of were the much larger size. So it was the 80s. So
Oh yeah, hey, my first working at the prison, my first two-way radio was like halfway down my thigh. That thing was like I'd say probably 8 to 10 inches long.
So Chase and the vigilante, since they're both in the woods, do manage to meet up. And one thing that throws Adrian Chase as they're kind of pointing guns at each other is the vigilante calls Chase by his name, which of course causes him to freeze. And then a gunfight eventually ensues. And now Santiago is aware that there are other people, in the vicinity of his compound. And finally, this helicopter with the electrocutioner arrives on the scene, and he shows up at Santiago's place and actually, surprisingly, really quickly kills Santiago. You thought they would drag that out a little bit, but no. He basically just completely fries Santiago, and then the electrocutioner is attempting to make his escape from the compound and comes across Chase and the vigilante fighting it out. So our next issue is going to be titled Unmasked. I didn't even give the name of this episode, which is Into the Night. So anything else before I talk about the little backup story here?
Well, I just think it's interesting. We've got, Vigilante number 2 knows who Adrian is. I think that's our first clue to who this is. And again, everything before just feels like random psycho guy.
Mm-hmm.
Before this point, where it just seems like somebody random is taking the costume. Now we're getting a little more hints as to this is someone who knows Adrian. Now again, he's a judge. Now he's sort of a public figure. But again, this definitely leads into, the reveal as to who the new vigilante is.
Do you think he's? I think I maybe made this prediction. Maybe I did. I can't remember. I remember predicting something about the judge that was trying to get Adrian to take that job.
Yeah, and you predicted he would be the electrocutioner.
That's what it was, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm wondering if he's not the new vigilante.
So, we're going to find out next issue.
All right.
Before next issue.
Hey, folks, this is like a live reading. This is like you're learning as we are.
As Mike is, I've read it. I did my reading.
I was a little slow on mine, but I did get all my reading done. So So the backup story is just about our psychiatrist. So we get a little bit of information about his history: abusive father, abused mother.
There's lots of abusive fathers in this book. That's definitely a running theme of the Vigilante comic.
But it fills in the backstory of that character who I assume we're going to see more of when we get to the last 24 issues and an annual of this series. And who knows, maybe I'm wrong. So anything else from 26 you guys want to talk about before we go to the last issue for the evening?
No, I don't think so.
Nope.
All right. So we open up with the police, the New York police, making their way by helicopter. Lots of helicopters in these last couple of issues, making their way to the Catskills because of the sighting. So now you have, well, of course, everybody's there now. The New York police, the local police, the electrocutioner, Adrian Chase, and the new vigilante, and Santiago all have made their way to the Catskills. Of course, Santiago's dead at this point. So Mr. Wexler, who was basically, I guess, Santiago's number 2, arrives at the estate, and with Santiago dead, he basically starts to take over organization, or takes over the organization. Starts telling everybody what we got to do. We got to report, the murder. We don't want to bring any unnecessary attention, and by not reporting a homicide, that would be clearly illegal, and we don't want to, to get into any of that. So if they walk out the door and find out the police are already there, and they quickly report the incident to the police. We kind of jump over to a scene with Marcia, who's lamenting on her couch that she doesn't know what to do about Adrian Chase, and that lasts, all of about 4 or 5 panels as she watches aerobicizing on the TV. Yeah,
I feel like the artist had a little fun with those panels.
So now this issue. There's lots and lots of words and balloons and thought balloons, and it's very, very wordy. And I'm skipping over most of it because it's basically this you have this dialogue that's basically been going on the entire time about what is Chase's responsibility as the former vigilante, and what should he be doing about the new vigilante. And then we get some words from the new vigilante about what he's thinking about. All that is going on.
It almost makes me wonder if this was written Marvel style. It's so wordy and so many captions and blurbs and things.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I think we've talked about. Oh, well, actually, this was Cowan, and Cowan had done some work for Marvel, so yeah. You could see that because actually it had been Todd Smith for several of the previous issues. So.
Yeah.
But anyway, so let's see. So here's where things get interesting. We go back to Bailiff Winston, who, because he's been so worried about Chase, guess where he heads? He follows Adrian to the Catskills. So he's going through the woods and actually comes across the vigilante. So whenever he does, the vigilante and Winston kind of get into a little bit of a fist fight, and vigilante for a second thought that he might have killed him, but just had knocked him unconscious. That actually was before. Actually, no, let's see, that's a little bit later here. So. Anyway, where am I at now? So the electrocutioner has been trying to escape Santiago's men, and actually during the escape, he gets shot at least once, and Chase later on says maybe a couple of times. So this is where, after that scene, this is where Winston bumps into the vigilante and gets knocked out. So I took things a little out of order there. Where are we at now? So electrocutioner is hid up inside of a barn or some type of outdoor storage building, and Chase follows him into the building, and surprisingly, because he feels some responsibility for what the electrocutioner is doing, shoots him. So he adds a third bullet to the electrocutioner, and here's the big scene that we've been waiting for. Is Chase removes the electrocutioner's mask and has no idea who it is. And this reminded me. Go ahead.
Well, as would be the case in real life, if you unmask someone, unless they're a celebrity, you're not gonna know them typically.
It reminds me of the scene there was a comic where Lex Luthor possessed the Flash's body.
Oh yeah.
So he goes and stands in front of a mirror and takes off his mask, and he's like, I have no idea who this is.
Yeah.
Yes, I remember that.
I don't know where it's from. Oh, is that what it is?
Yeah,
okay.
It's the Great Brain Robbery.
Okay.
episode.
All right. So now Electrocutioner is taken care of. So who do we got left? Well, we got Chase and Vigilante that are actually still standing. So Vigilante also comes across that same barn storage building. Um, and Vigilante walks in and basically just is pleading with Chase basically just to leave, just walk away. Saying that they're on the same side. The two are pointing guns at each other. So they're kind of at this standoff, and as they get close to each other, Chase is able to be a little bit faster on the trigger and actually shoots Vigilante straight into the chest. And once again, Chase over the body of this, at this point still alive, Vigilante pulls off the mask, and it's none other than Alan Wells, who is the judge. So now I kind of agree with Mike that I wouldn't be surprised if the original plan wasn't for this guy to be the electrocutioner, but whenever they changed the story up, that they might have just went a different direction with the new writing. So
Yeah.
It feels like they wanted someone that had more of an impact to be revealed as the new Vigilante, because if it's just, it feels like it almost should have been switched, where it is just random guy is the new Vigilante, just some unhinged person who decided to start doing this. Because that feels like how it's played up until this last issue.
Yeah.
I mean, the previous issue, where, there really isn't any kind of clues given to who it is. There's no foreshadowing really given. We don't really have any hint until he calls Adrian by his name in the previous issue.
Yeah.
Right.
So before Alan dies, he kind of goes through how he, was going to visit Chase, saw him dump the costume, felt like he needed to take over, talks a little bit about his own personal history. So Chase then wraps up Alan's body. I guess nobody's heard all of these multiple gunshots, even though there's cops all over the place, and carries Alan away from the scene. And of course, the last little bit here is somebody who I am assuming is going to be Winston, is looking out of the building, watching Adrian Chase walk away with the body wrapped up on his shoulder, and says, "My God, I never suspected." So I don't know who else it could be at that point, but that's who I'm going to make the guess.
That makes the most sense.
Mm-hmm. But again, I have, and I keep saying this as long as I think it's better. The writing has been so much better, and I think I've liked the issues that Dennis Cowan has drawn a little bit better than the Todd Smith issues. This is kind of before Cowan kind of got that really squared off style that he did for like his stuff like on Deathlock, which I didn't care so much for.
The other interesting thing about his art too is he does something in this issue particularly that most of the artists don't do, is he actually puts detail into the sort of black areas of the suit where you see his musculature underneath the suit. Because typically from like the jump with George Perez, the black of the suit is basically treated like a silhouette. And it's a really nice sort of graphic device that they use throughout the book. But Cowan does kind of get away, and he's doing it too throughout the book, but he does occasionally kind of get away from that. Most of the artists haven't that have done this book. They've kind of, I'm assuming they're sticking to a design sheet done by Perez, when they created the character and that kind of thing. But he's one of the few artists who, actually kind of puts some detail into the body. Now, again, the covers, are kind of the exception to that, where the different artists seem to do that. But again, a lot of them stick to the silhouette kind of form of it too. And I really want to point out this cover, too, by Joe Kubert on this one. This is just a nice, really graphic, kind of stark, especially for Joe Kubert. We really had a lot of kind of sketchy detail in his work and stuff like that. This is just, like, I didn't even realize it was Kubert at first when I saw it.
Until you see the signature, you just saw it, yeah.
But, and again, like with his history with Sergeant Rock and everything, it's like I'd like to see a lot of covers by him on this book. You know what I mean? Probably would have been pretty good.
For sure.
I'm going to go with like a very fine grade on these books again. I just think the writing's been revved up, since Cooperberg took it over. It's nice to see some, plot lines, brought to their conclusion. Really was surprised that they resolved the Electrocutioner plot line and the new Vigilante plot line in the same issue. You would think that would have been done over a longer story. So maybe Cooperberg was just like, maybe this is something he felt like Wolfman had started and he just wanted to finish, and so he could move on to his own stuff. I'd be interested to see how things are moving forward.
Yeah.
Well, these days it would have been over the course of a larger arc, I'm sure, to stretch it out.
And again, this isn't the last we'll see the Electrocutioner either. He does show back up later in DC. I want to say 91, 92, he kills Batman at a certain point. He knocks Batman and kills him. And Robin forces him to resuscitate him. But technically Electrocutioner killed Batman at one point.
Yeah, I remember talking about this that fact several months ago, and I pulled that issue. I happen to have it, so I read it.
Is it the same Electrocutioner, or is it somebody else with his gear?
Might be someone else. It's definitely the same gear, same gimmick. Okay. Again, I don't know if it's the same character or not. They
never what I read is he previously appeared in Batman. His first appearance is in a Batman or a Detective Comics issue, and I think I had that. I don't think I have the one in the 91 issue.
Yeah, because that when he shows back up in Batman, or it might have been Detective then, he is, rocking this same costume that he has here.
Dan, what'd you rate these issues at?
Yeah, I think I'd go very fine with this too. Again, I feel overall the storyline is better. I'm glad we're getting everything kind of wrapped up. I feel like, it being Alan is sort of a cop-out a little bit. I think there's other ways we could have gone that might have been more effective. And they are building up the supporting cast more, but again, we've lost another one now. So I don't know. I guess I'll have to judge that based on where we go from here. It looks like we are going to get a new Vigilante character next time. We'll just have to see where this goes. But yeah, I'll say very fine.
Mike?
I say very fine plus, just because I think I probably overrated some of the earlier issues. And, with everything being relative, I just have to grade these higher than what I did in the earlier. And I know that their character bits are improving. I think that if Kupperberg actually does it his way, it'll be a little bit more of a slow rollout of these subplots, and there'll be some nice surprises as we go along.
So I guess the question is because I'm speculating, because I'm not read anything past this point. I mean, Adrian for the last several issues has been, okay, he can't sleep. He's got his love life's all messed up. He's basically snapping at everybody. So he's borderline, if he's not, going insane, he's borderline insane. Do you think because the two big plot lines with the new Vigilante and the Electrocutioner being resolved, do you think he goes back towards normality, or are you thinking that's going to be a plot line that they're going to go after with him being crazy? You know what I mean?
He will continue to have issues. I'll say that, I think.
Okay. We know he's got an issue with Marcia, but beyond that,
I don't think they push the crazy aspect past this.
Okay.
Because then I think you have to have him as Vigilante again, which I don't think they're going to do. But I also don't think you can push the crazy, because we kind of already did that with the beginning of this arc, where he thinks he is sleepwalking or developed a second personality or something.
No.
And I don't think you play that card again. Okay.
I think crazy or disturbed can be a pretty broadly defined or interpreted term.
Yeah,
so
I mean, he's not really loosely here too, by the way.
Yeah. I think he's. Yeah, while he won't be portrayed, I wouldn't think like he has been in a couple of issues where he was just completely distraught, thinking he was not even in control of his own actions. I don't think so much that, but he's still haunted.
Okay. All right. Well, anything else we got to add?
Halfway there. Halfway through, a little over halfway of the 80s Vigilante run now, so it's all downhill from here.
That's right.
Hopefully not story-wise.
Oh, well, it's been uphill for the last few. Yeah. So the second half of the first half was uphill. So
getting better. So see where we go from there. So anybody have anything else to bring up, or?
I think that's it for me.
Okay.
That's it for me.
All right, Scott. Where can everybody find you?
Burgcomics.com, BURG Comics.com. There are links to my eBay store, my Facebook page, my Instagram page, all that fun stuff.
Mike, what about you?
You know.
Well, for someone who's listening to this episode for the first time, who's just now given the Campus Comics cast a chance, where can they find you?
It's the very inventive Twitter account name Mike Atchison5.
Right. And this is Dan Brown, and you can find me online at Detective651 on Twitter, Instagram, and my TeePublic page. Where, holidays are coming up, we got a lot of sales. I've got my Big Lebowski design back up on there for a limited time, so check that out now if you want one. And you can find me Saturdays at the store at Campus Comics at 816 East Main Street, Suite B in Carbondale. 618-457-6011, or you can find us on Facebook and Twitter. And we're open Tuesday through Saturday, 11 to 6.
And don't forget to follow Dan on Instagram so you can check out his Inktober work. He's got 7 more to go, right?
Yep. This is the I like doing it, but I'm ready for it to be over phase of Inktober that I go through every year.
If you give yourself a little jump start, you wouldn't be so stressed.
Yeah, so this is the 5th year of that, so I've hit every deadline so far, so check that out, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
So we're going to talk about Future State first, and then Dan
Helstrom
goes
first,
into
then Future State, and then Vigilante.
Okay.
And it's a non-spoiler Helstrom. So.
And so did you watch the first season then?
I have watched the first 8 of 10 episodes.
Oh, okay.
I have not completed it, which is why I'm doing a non-spoiler one. But yeah, it's just not great.
And what is that again?
Imagine that.
Helstrom. So it's based off of some Marvel characters, Son of Satan and Satana, excuse me. They were created basically by Gary Friedrich and a few others, Roy Thomas, and it's kind of like the thing they did after Ghost Rider.
Okay.
So he's basically like he's supposed to be just like a magic user, basically a demonic magic user, but kind of he's got like a demon, but he works for the good guys type of a thing. And so Hulu has a series, but yeah, it has nothing to do with the Marvel universe, and yeah, which is what I'm going to basically say. So it's not that it's bad, it's just not great. So.
Yeah, the visuals are good. It looks good.
No, they're not really. There's almost no special effects.
They're what?
There's almost no special effects in it. There's very little special effects.
Yeah, I wasn't watching a video of it. I was just watching some images.
Yeah. So. Pull up the camera.
Well, I'll just keep quiet.
Well, I mean, I'm only going to spend like a minute or two talking about it, so it's not like it's going to be an extended thing because I'm not going to do spoilers or anything. So
okay.
I just realized too that they even spelled his name differently because in the comics he's Damien, Damion, and he's Damon, Damon. Of course, they changed. Yeah, instead of being Satana, she's just Anna.
Wow, what is the point?
Exactly. That's the whole thing. It's like, what is the point? So.
Oh, this is what you guys talked about? I think I heard Dan say you want to say Helstrom. It was like it was an accidental spelling, and they just stuck with it.
Yeah, probably.
So we're gonna talk about Future State first, and then Helstrom first, then Future State, and then Vigilante. Okay, and it's a non-spoiler Helstrom. So. And so did you watch the first season then? I have watched the first 8 of 10 episodes. I have not completed it, which is why I'm doing a non-spoiler one. But yeah, it's just not great. And what is that again? Helstrom. So it's based off of some Marvel characters, Son of Satan and Satana, excuse me. They were created basically by Gary Friedrich and a few others, Roy Thomas, and it's kind of like the thing they did after Ghost Rider. Okay. And so he's basically like he's just a, I don't know, he's supposed to be just like a magic user, just basically a demonic magic user, but kind of he's got like a demon, but he works for the good guys type of a thing. And so Hulu has a series, but yeah, it has nothing to do with it has nothing to do with the Marvel universe, and yeah, which is what I'm gonna basically say. So it's not that it's bad, it's just not great. So
yeah, visuals are good. It looks good.
no, they're not really. There's almost no special effects.
They're what?
There's almost no special effects in it. There's very little special effects.
Yeah, I wasn't watching a video of it. I was just watching some images.
Yeah. So
I'll just keep quiet.
Well, I mean, I'm only gonna spend like a minute or two talking about it, so it's not like it's gonna be an extended thing because I'm not gonna do spoilers or anything. So
okay.
I just realized too they even spelled his name differently because in the comics he's Damien, D-A-M-I-O-N, and he's Damon, D-A-M-O-N. Because they changed, instead of being Satana, she's just Anna.
Wow, what is the point?
Exactly. That's the whole thing. It's like, what is the point? So.
Oh, is this is what you guys talked about? I think I heard Dan say you want to say Helstrom. It was like it was an accidental spelling and they just stuck with it.
Yeah, probably.